Last weekend, at my 8-year-old nephew's birthday party, my own sister introduced me to her wealthy friends as the one who never figured things out. 3 hours later, those same people were asking for my business card and begging me to consider them for partnerships. What they discovered about my life that afternoon changed how my entire family sees success forever. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The invitation arrived on a Tuesday afternoon in mid-September, sliding under my apartment door with the casual indifference that had characterized my sister Victoria's communications for the past 5 years. The pale blue cardstock announced Tyler's 8th birthday celebration in elegant script, complete with a watercolor illustration of a carousel that probably cost more than most people spend on their entire party budget. I held the invitation between my fingers, noting the premium paper quality and the embossed gold lettering that spelled out the venue address in Pacific Heights, one of San Francisco's most exclusive neighborhoods. The return address confirmed what I already knew. Victoria had moved into a world where birthday parties for children required formal invitations and professional event coordination. The party was scheduled for Saturday afternoon at 2 p.m. at the Morrison Estate, a private events venue that overlooked the bay and commanded rental fees that exceeded my monthly rent. Below the main details, a handwritten note in Victoria's precise penmanship added, "Casual dress welcome. Looking forward to catching up. Casual dress welcome." The phrase carried undertones that revealed everything about how Victoria perceived my current circumstances. She assumed that casual was the best I could manage, that formal attire lay beyond my financial reach, that accommodation needed to be made for my presumably limited wardrobe options. I set the invitation on my small dining table and walked to the window of my modest one-bedroom apartment in the Mission District. The view consisted of fire escapes, laundry lines, and the perpetual construction projects that had been transforming the neighborhood for the past decade. My building sat wedged between a Salvadoran restaurant and a vintage clothing store, both of which generated the kind of authentic street-level energy that Pacific Heights could never replicate, despite its carefully curated aesthetics. The contrast between my living situation and Victoria's circumstances had been developing for years, but it had crystallized dramatically since her marriage to Richard Blackstone 3 years earlier. Richard represented old San Francisco wealth, the kind that traced its origins to railroad fortunes and real estate speculation during the gold rush era. His family name appeared on hospital wings and museum galleries throughout the city, and their social calendar revolved around charity galas and country club events that required months of advance planning. Victoria had adapted to this world with remarkable efficiency, transforming herself from a middle-class marketing coordinator into the wife of a venture capital partner who moved comfortably among tech executives and established aristocracy. Her transformation included updating her wardrobe, refining her vocabulary, and developing opinions about wine regions and art collections that demonstrated her cultural sophistication. Our relationship had cooled gradually as her circumstances improved. The weekly coffee meetings had become monthly phone calls, which eventually evolved into holiday cards and birthday party invitations. Victoria never explicitly stated that my presence in her elevated social circles created discomfort, but the evidence accumulated through a series of small signals and careful omissions. I had not been invited to her wedding engagement party, which she later explained had been an intimate gathering of close family. The wedding reception included a +1 invitation, but the seating arrangement placed me at a table with Richard's elderly relatives, rather than among the younger professionals who comprised Victoria's new peer group. Holiday celebrations had shifted to Richard's family estate in Napa Valley, with guest lists that emphasized his business associates and their spouses. The pattern was clear without being openly hostile. Victoria maintained the appearance of sisterly connection while gradually reducing my integration into her new life. The birthday party invitation represented continuity with this approach, inclusive enough to demonstrate family loyalty, but structured to minimize potential embarrassment from my presumed inability to match the social and economic standards of her established circle. I opened my laptop and conducted brief research on the Morrison estate to understand the context I would be entering on Saturday afternoon. The venue's website featured photographs of meticulously maintained gardens, marble terraces, and panoramic views of San Francisco Bay. The events gallery showcased weddings, corporate retreats, and fundraising galas that attracted prominent political figures and technology industry leaders. The birthday party would unfold in this setting, among guests who viewed such environments as routine rather than remarkable. Richard's business associates would arrive in luxury vehicles driven by personal chauffeurs or valet services. The mothers would wear designer casual wear that cost more than most people's monthly salaries. The children would be accustomed to elaborate celebrations that included professional entertainment, custom catering, and party favors that exceeded the value of typical birthday presents. My own professional circumstances had developed along a completely different trajectory that Victoria either did not understand or chose not to acknowledge. After graduating with a degree in computer science, I had spent 2 years working for a mid-sized software company in South Bay, before recognizing that corporate employment limited my potential for creating significant impact or achieving financial independence. The decision to leave secure employment and pursue independent consulting had been calculated rather than impulsive. I had identified market gaps in cybersecurity consulting that larger firms were unable to address effectively due to their bureaucratic structures and standardized service offerings. Small and medium-sized businesses required customized security solutions that could be implemented quickly and affordably, but they lacked access to expertise that was typically reserved for enterprise-level clients. I established Sterling Cybersecurity Solutions as a boutique consultancy that specialized in rapid vulnerability assessments, custom security protocol development, and incident response services for clients who needed immediate attention rather than lengthy engagement processes. The business model emphasized direct client relationships, flexible service delivery, and results-oriented pricing that aligned my success with their security improvements. The work was intellectually demanding and financially rewarding, but it operated primarily behind the scenes in ways that were not visible to people outside the technology industry. My clients included regional banks, healthcare systems, manufacturing companies, and professional services firms that faced increasingly sophisticated cyber threats but lacked internal resources to address complex security challenges. The consulting relationship typically began with urgent phone calls from executives who had discovered security breaches or suspected vulnerabilities that could expose sensitive client data or proprietary business information. I would conduct comprehensive assessments, identify critical weaknesses, and implement solutions that prevented catastrophic losses while ensuring regulatory compliance and operational continuity. These projects generated substantial fees because they addressed existential threats to business operations, but the work occurred in conference rooms and server facilities rather than public venues where social recognition might result. My success was measured through client retention, referral generation, and revenue growth, rather than award ceremonies or media coverage that would communicate professional achievement to family members. The nature of cybersecurity consulting also required discretion about client relationships and project details. Information about security vulnerabilities, implementation strategies, and business risks remained confidential to protect clients from competitive disadvantage or public exposure. This professional requirement meant that I could not discuss my most significant accomplishments or elaborate on the scope of problems I solved for prominent organizations. Victoria's understanding of my career remained frozen at the point when I had left corporate employment to pursue independent consulting. She had interpreted that transition as evidence of professional instability or lack of ambition rather than strategic positioning for greater impact and financial success. Her questions about my work focused on whether I had found steady employment or developed plans for returning to traditional career advancement, rather than recognizing the entrepreneurial achievement that my consulting practice represented. The disconnect between my actual professional accomplishments and Victoria's perception of my circumstances had widened over time as her own social environment elevated. Her new peer group consisted of people whose success was displayed through visible markers like residential addresses, luxury goods, exclusive memberships, and elaborate lifestyle choices. The discreet nature of my cybersecurity consulting practice provided none of these external validation signals, making it difficult for Victoria to comprehend or explain my professional status to her sophisticated social circle. Saturday morning arrived with the kind of crisp autumn weather that made San Francisco's microclimates particularly dramatic. The Mission District remained warm and sunny, but Pacific Heights would likely be cooler and potentially foggy, requiring careful consideration of clothing choices that would be appropriate for outdoor garden party activities. I selected attire that balanced professional quality with the casual dress code specified on the invitation. A well-fitted navy blazer over dark jeans and leather boots provided versatility for changing weather conditions, while maintaining the kind of understated elegance that would not appear out of place among Victoria's elevated social group. The outfit was neither ostentatious nor apologetic, reflecting confidence without attempting to compete with designer casual wear that might characterize other guests' fashion choices. The drive from Mission District to Pacific Heights provided a geographic tour of San Francisco's economic stratification. The route climbed through increasingly affluent neighborhoods, where Victorian architecture gave way to modernist mansions and carefully curated landscapes. By the time I reached the Morrison estate, the socio-economic transition was complete, from authentic urban culture to manicured wealth that prioritized aesthetics over accessibility. The Morrison estate's entrance featured wrought iron gates that opened onto a circular driveway, lined with mature oak trees and meticulously maintained landscaping. Valet attendants directed guests toward parking areas while maintaining the kind of polished service that made luxury feel effortless rather than ostentatious. The birthday celebration had clearly been planned as a showcase event that would reinforce Richard's family's social position while providing Tyler with memories that matched his elevated circumstances. I approached the main entrance and immediately recognized the demographic composition of the guest list. The adults clustered in conversation groups that demonstrated familiarity with each other and comfort with the venue's opulent setting. The women wore clothing combinations that achieved the designer casual aesthetic with apparent effortlessness, while the men displayed the kind of relaxed confidence that accompanies financial security and social status. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Victoria appeared near the entrance, greeting guests with the gracious warmth that had become her signature social approach since marrying into the Blackstone family. She wore a cream-colored cashmere sweater and tailored slacks that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent, accessorized with jewelry that struck the perfect balance between elegant and understated. When she spotted me approaching, her smile brightened with genuine warmth, but I noticed the subtle shift in her posture that indicated slight apprehension about introducing me to her established social circle. The greeting hug was authentic, but she immediately began steering me toward a quieter area of the garden rather than integrating me into the main conversation clusters. "I am so glad you could make it," Victoria said, maintaining the enthusiasm while conducting a quick visual assessment of my appearance. "You look wonderful. I love that you kept it simple and comfortable." Simple and comfortable. The word choices revealed her assumption that my clothing represented the upper limit of my wardrobe capabilities, rather than a deliberate selection that prioritized appropriateness over display. She had interpreted my understated elegance as evidence of limited options rather than sophisticated restraint. The first introduction occurred within minutes of my arrival, when Victoria encountered Margaret Chen, a woman whose husband served as managing partner at one of the city's most prestigious law firms. Margaret wore an outfit that had clearly been assembled by a personal stylist, and her conversation style suggested familiarity with social events that required navigating complex hierarchies and unspoken status indicators. "Margaret, I would like you to meet my sister Elena," Victoria said with the kind of careful modulation that indicated she was managing potential social complications. "Elena is still figuring out her career path. She does some computer consulting work, but you know how challenging the technology industry can be for independent contractors. Still figuring out her career path." The phrase hung in the air like a diplomatic explanation for professional inadequacy. Victoria had reduced my cybersecurity consulting practice to part-time computer work, while simultaneously apologizing for my apparent inability to achieve stable employment. The introduction positioned me as someone who required patience and understanding, rather than recognition or professional respect. Margaret responded with the kind of polite interest that accomplished people display when encountering someone whose circumstances do not warrant serious attention. "How interesting. The technology field certainly requires adaptability. Are you considering returning to corporate employment, or do you prefer the flexibility of consulting work?" The question contained multiple assumptions about my professional circumstances and career aspirations. Margaret had interpreted Victoria's introduction as evidence that my consulting practice represented temporary employment between more substantial career opportunities rather than a deliberate business strategy that generated significant success. Before I could respond comprehensively, Victoria smoothly redirected the conversation toward Margaret's recent vacation to Tuscany, effectively terminating discussion of my professional activities. The transition was executed with social skill, but the message was unmistakable. My career circumstances were not suitable topics for extended conversation among this particular group of accomplished professionals. The pattern repeated consistently throughout the next hour, as Victoria introduced me to various guests. Each introduction included subtle signals that positioned me as someone whose life circumstances required diplomatic explanation rather than celebration. The computer consulting was consistently described as tentative or transitional. My living situation in Mission District was omitted entirely from conversations. My unmarried status was presented as evidence that I was still developing personal stability rather than making deliberate lifestyle choices. Richard Blackstone eventually approached our small group near the garden's central fountain. He wore the kind of expensive casual attire that demonstrated wealth through subtle details rather than obvious branding, and his conversation style reflected the confidence that accompanies generational affluence and established social position. "Elena, wonderful to see you again," Richard said with practiced warmth that did not extend beyond surface politeness. "Victoria mentioned that you have been exploring opportunities in the technology sector. That must be exciting work, especially with all the changes happening in that industry." Exploring opportunities. The phrase reduced my established consulting practice to job-searching activities, while simultaneously suggesting that the technology industry represented an experimental career choice rather than a field where I had developed recognized expertise. Richard's tone conveyed the kind of gentle condescension that wealthy people often display when discussing less successful relatives or family connections. The conversation continued in this vein for several more minutes, with Richard offering general observations about technology trends and entrepreneurial challenges that demonstrated his superficial familiarity with business concepts, while revealing his complete lack of understanding about cybersecurity consulting or my specific professional accomplishments. Other guests began approaching our group, drawn by Richard's presence and interested in meeting family members they had not previously encountered. Each introduction followed the same pattern. Victoria would identify me as her sister who was working in technology consulting, followed by careful deflection away from detailed discussion of my professional activities or personal circumstances. James Morrison, whose family owned the estate where the party was being held, joined our conversation circle after greeting several other guests. He represented the kind of established San Francisco wealth that traced its origins to 19th-century business ventures and had been carefully preserved through strategic investments and social connections. "Any relation to the Sterling family that founded Sterling Maritime?" Morrison asked after learning my last name. "They were prominent in shipping during the early days of the port development." "I do not believe so," I replied, recognizing an opportunity to redirect conversation toward more substantial topics. "My background is in cybersecurity consulting, focusing on protecting businesses from sophisticated digital threats." Quote. Morrison's expression shifted slightly as he processed this information. Cybersecurity is certainly becoming critical for businesses of all sizes. We recently had to upgrade our security systems after some concerning incidents in our industry. The comment suggested that Morrison might have direct experience with cybersecurity challenges. But before I could explore this connection further, Victoria smoothly interjected with questions about the estate's garden design, effectively terminating discussion of my professional expertise once again. The cumulative effect of these interactions created a clear picture of how Victoria perceived my role in her elevated social environment. I was to be introduced politely but not positioned as someone whose accomplishments or expertise warranted serious attention from her accomplished peers. My presence was tolerated as a family obligation, but my integration into meaningful conversations was carefully managed to prevent potential embarrassment or social complications. By mid-afternoon, I had begun to understand that Victoria's invitation had been extended primarily to maintain the appearance of family inclusion rather than genuine interest in my participation in her social world. The birthday party provided a convenient opportunity to demonstrate sisterly loyalty, while simultaneously reinforcing the social boundaries that separated her new circumstances from my presumably less successful lifestyle. The realization was not particularly surprising, but it crystallized the extent to which Victoria's priorities had shifted since her marriage into the Blackstone family. Her social positioning now required careful management of all relationships and associations that might influence her standing among the wealthy professionals who comprised her peer group. As the afternoon progressed, I began to observe the other guests more carefully, noting their conversation topics, professional backgrounds, and the subtle status indicators that governed their social interactions. The gathering represented a carefully curated collection of successful professionals who shared similar educational backgrounds, career trajectories, and lifestyle choices that reinforced their collective identity as accomplished, sophisticated urbanites. What none of them suspected was that the person they had dismissed as Victoria's struggling sister, who was still figuring things out, had actually built something that would soon command their immediate attention and professional respect in ways that would fundamentally alter the social dynamics of the entire gathering. The transformation would begin with a single phone call that would arrive during the dessert service, but its implications would extend far beyond the boundaries of Tyler's 8th birthday celebration. The dessert service had just commenced when my phone began vibrating against my wrist. The Apple Watch display showed an incoming call from Dr. Sarah Martinez, the Chief Information Security Officer at Pacific Medical Center, one of San Francisco's most prominent healthcare systems. The timing was unfortunate, but the urgency indicator suggested this was not a call that could be postponed until after Tyler's birthday celebration concluded. I excused myself from the conversation group that had formed around the elaborate 3-tier birthday cake, walking toward a quieter section of the Morrison Estate Gardens where I could take the call without disrupting the festivities. The marble pathways led to a secluded alcove overlooking San Francisco Bay, providing both privacy and cellular reception that would support a professional conversation. "Elena, thank you for answering so quickly," Dr. Martinez said as soon as I connected the call. Her voice carried the controlled tension that healthcare executives displayed when facing crisis situations that threatened patient safety and institutional reputation. "We have a situation that requires your immediate expertise, and I mean immediate." Dr. Martinez and I had worked together 6 months earlier when Pacific Medical Center discovered that their patient record system had been compromised by a sophisticated ransomware attack that threatened to expose confidential medical information for over 200,000 patients. The incident had required 48 hours of continuous work to isolate the breach, eliminate the malicious code, and restore system functionality without paying the ransom demands or losing critical patient data. The successful resolution of that crisis had established my reputation among healthcare executives throughout the Bay Area as someone who could address complex cybersecurity emergencies that exceeded the capabilities of larger consulting firms or internal IT departments. The work had generated substantial fees and referral opportunities, but more importantly, it had positioned Sterling Cybersecurity Solutions as the preferred vendor for organizations facing existential threats to their digital infrastructure. "What type of situation are we discussing?" I asked, moving further into the alcove to ensure complete privacy for the conversation. Through the garden's carefully maintained landscaping, I could see the birthday party continuing with the kind of animated celebration that 8-year-old children bring to elaborate social gatherings. "Someone has gained unauthorized access to our surgical scheduling system and is threatening to disrupt operations starting Monday morning unless we transfer $500,000 in cryptocurrency to an offshore account," Dr. Martinez explained. "Our internal IT team believes this is connected to the same criminal organization that targeted Mercy General last month, but they lack the specialized knowledge to trace the intrusion or implement effective countermeasures." The situation represented exactly the type of high-stakes cybersecurity crisis that demonstrated the value of specialized consulting expertise. Surgical scheduling systems contain some of the most sensitive operational data in healthcare organizations, including patient identification information, procedure details, staff schedules, and resource allocation patterns that could be exploited for identity theft, insurance fraud, or competitive intelligence gathering. More critically, disruption of surgical scheduling could delay life-saving procedures, create chaos in operating room management, and expose the hospital to liability claims from patients whose treatments were postponed or canceled due to system failures. The financial and reputational consequences of paying ransom demands versus implementing technical solutions created complex decision-making pressures that required immediate expert guidance. Have you contacted federal authorities about this incident? I asked, knowing that healthcare ransomware attacks fell under FBI jurisdiction and that early coordination with law enforcement could influence both tactical responses and legal obligations for incident disclosure. We notified the FBI this morning, but they indicated that technical remediation would need to be handled through private cybersecurity consultants while they pursue the criminal investigation aspects, Dr. Martinez replied. Your name was specifically recommended by Agent Patricia Wong, who said you had successfully resolved similar situations without compromising ongoing federal investigations. Agent Wong and I had collaborated on 3 previous cases where cybersecurity incidents required coordination between private sector technical remediation and federal law enforcement activities. These relationships had developed through professional associations and industry conferences, where cybersecurity consultants, law enforcement officials, and healthcare executives shared information about emerging threats and best practices for incident response. The FBI recommendation represented a significant professional endorsement that would be valuable for future business development, but more immediately, it indicated that the Pacific Medical Center situation involved sophisticated criminal activities that exceeded typical opportunistic ransomware attacks. The federal interest suggested connections to organized cybercrime operations that targeted multiple healthcare institutions using advanced persistent threat methodologies. I can be at your facility within 90 minutes to begin the technical assessment, I told Dr. Martinez. However, I need to establish some parameters for this engagement. My standard emergency response fee structure applies, which includes premium rates for weekend work and expedited resolution timelines. More importantly, I will need complete administrative access to all affected systems and direct communication with your board of directors if strategic decisions become necessary. The fee structure for emergency cybersecurity consulting reflected both the specialized expertise required and the business disruption costs that organizations faced when critical systems were compromised. Weekend emergency rates typically ranged from $500 to $1,000 per hour, depending on the complexity of the incident and the potential consequences of system failures. Pacific Medical Center represented a particularly high-value client because healthcare organizations faced regulatory compliance requirements, patient safety obligations, and reputation management challenges that made cybersecurity failures extremely costly. The combination of technical complexity and business criticality justified premium pricing that reflected the true value of expert intervention during crisis situations. Cost is not the primary concern, Dr. Martinez said immediately. Patient safety and operational continuity are our only priorities. The board has authorized unlimited consulting fees for resolving this situation, and I have executive authority to approve whatever access requirements you specify. The conversation continued for another 10 minutes as we established the technical parameters, timeline expectations, and coordination protocols that would govern the emergency engagement. Dr. Martinez provided additional details about the scope of the system compromise, the specific threats that had been communicated by the attackers, and the internal resources that would be available to support my technical investigation and remediation efforts. By the time I concluded the call, the birthday party had transitioned into the gift-opening ceremony that represented the climax of Tyler's celebration. The children had gathered in a circle around the birthday boy as he worked through an impressive collection of presents that reflected the generous budget that Richard's family allocated for special occasions. I rejoined the adult conversation groups, but my attention was divided between social obligations and mental preparation for the complex technical challenge that awaited me at Pacific Medical Center. Cybersecurity emergency responses required systematic, analytical thinking, creative problem-solving approaches, and sustained concentration over extended periods that could last 12 to 18 hours, depending on the sophistication of the attack vectors. Victoria noticed my slightly distracted demeanor and approached with the kind of concerned expression that older sisters display when they suspect personal or professional problems might be affecting family social events. Her question was delivered with diplomatic phrasing that allowed for private conversation without drawing attention from other guests. Is everything all right? You seem a bit preoccupied since your phone call, she said, positioning herself to create a semi-private conversation space within the larger gathering. I received a call about a work situation that requires my attention later today, I replied, providing truthful information without elaborating on the details that would have revealed the scope and importance of the emergency engagement. Nothing urgent enough to leave the party early, but something I will need to address this evening. Victoria's expression shifted to reflect the kind of gentle concern that she had perfected since joining the Blackstone family social circle. The facial expression conveyed empathy, while simultaneously reinforcing her assumptions about my professional circumstances and the types of work situations that might require weekend attention. I hope it is not too serious, she said with the tone that people use when discussing employment challenges that they assume involve routine workplace difficulties rather than high-level crisis management. It must be challenging to maintain work-life balance when consulting projects can demand attention at irregular hours. The comment revealed Victoria's fundamental misunderstanding of my professional situation. She had interpreted my consulting practice as a collection of small projects that generated inconsistent income and unpredictable scheduling demands, rather than recognizing the strategic business relationships and premium service delivery that characterized emergency cybersecurity consulting. Her concern was genuine, but it reflected her assumption that my work represented professional instability rather than specialized expertise that commanded substantial fees precisely because it addressed critical situations that other consultants could not handle effectively. The irony was that the phone call she was worried about would generate more income in a single weekend than many of her wealthy friends earned in an entire month. Before I could provide additional context that might have corrected her misperceptions, Margaret Chen approached our small conversation group with a question about restaurant recommendations for an upcoming dinner party she was planning. The topic transition effectively terminated discussion of my work situation, which was probably fortunate given the confidential nature of healthcare cybersecurity incidents. The remainder of the gift opening ceremony proceeded with the kind of enthusiasm that well-funded children's parties generated through careful planning and generous resource allocation. Tyler received an impressive array of presents that included electronic devices, sporting equipment, educational materials, and luxury items that most families would consider special occasion purchases rather than routine birthday gifts. Richard Blackstone had clearly spared no expense in ensuring that his stepson's celebration would create memorable experiences, while demonstrating the family's commitment to providing advantages that would support Tyler's development and social positioning. The birthday party represented not just a celebration but an investment in relationship building and status communication that would benefit the entire family's social capital. As the afternoon progressed toward early evening, guests began the gradual departure process that characterized well-orchestrated social events. The conversations shifted toward future social engagements, expressions of gratitude for the hospitality, and the polite logistics of coordinating follow-up activities that would maintain the relationships developed during the gathering. I participated in these social rituals while mentally preparing for the technical challenges that awaited me at Pacific Medical Center. The transition from birthday party socializing to cybersecurity crisis management would require psychological adjustment from diplomatic conversation to analytical problem solving, from careful relationship management to decisive technical action. Victoria approached as I was preparing to take my leave, offering the kind of warm conclusion to family gatherings that had characterized our relationship since childhood, despite the social complications that had developed since her marriage into elevated economic circumstances. "Thank you so much for coming," she said, embracing me with genuine affection that transcended the social positioning challenges that had influenced our interactions throughout the afternoon. "I know Tyler was happy to have his aunt here for his special day, and it meant a lot to Richard and me that you could join us." The gratitude was authentic, reflecting Victoria's continued commitment to family relationships despite the social pressures that complicated our interactions within her new economic and cultural environment. She genuinely valued my presence at important family occasions, even while managing the challenge of integrating my circumstances with her elevated social expectations. "Tyler is fortunate to have such wonderful celebrations," I replied, acknowledging both the quality of the event and the financial resources that had made such elaborate festivities possible. "I hope you will keep me informed about his upcoming activities and achievements." The exchange represented the kind of diplomatic conclusion that allowed both of us to maintain positive family relationships while acknowledging the unspoken tensions that influenced our interactions. Victoria could demonstrate inclusive family values, while I could participate in important occasions without creating social complications for her established relationships. As I walked toward the valet parking area where my modest but reliable Honda Civic waited among the collection of luxury vehicles that reflected the economic status of the other party guests, I reflected on the contrast between the social assumptions that had characterized the afternoon and the professional reality that would define my evening activities. The guests who had dismissed me as Victoria's sister who was still figuring things out would never know that the person they had politely tolerated was about to spend the night preventing a cybersecurity catastrophe that could have affected thousands of patients and disrupted critical healthcare operations throughout the Bay Area. The irony extended beyond simple professional misunderstanding. The same specialized knowledge that made me invaluable during cybersecurity crises also made my work invisible to people who measured success through conventional markers like luxury goods, exclusive social memberships, and residential addresses in prestigious neighborhoods. The drive from Pacific Heights to Pacific Medical Center would take approximately 30 minutes, providing sufficient time to mentally transition from social engagement to technical problem solving. The contrast between the two environments perfectly captured the disconnect between public perception and professional reality that defined my relationship with Victoria's elevated social world. Within 2 hours, I would be deep in the technical analysis that would determine whether Pacific Medical Center could maintain surgical operations on Monday morning, or whether hundreds of patients would face delayed medical procedures due to ransomware attacks. The responsibility for protecting patient safety and institutional operations rested entirely on my ability to outmaneuver sophisticated cybercriminals who had successfully compromised multiple healthcare systems throughout the region. The stakes could not have been higher. But the guests at Tyler's birthday party would never understand that the person they had cordially dismissed possessed the specialized expertise to address threats that exceeded the capabilities of Fortune 500 consulting firms and federal law enforcement agencies. The transformation from overlooked family member to recognized expert would begin as soon as I reached the hospital, but its implications would extend far beyond the technical challenges that awaited me in the Pacific Medical Center server rooms. Pacific Medical Center's executive parking garage at 7:15 p.m. on a Saturday evening presented a stark contrast to the elegant social atmosphere I had departed 30 minutes earlier. The concrete structure buzzed with the urgent activity of a healthcare institution confronting a crisis that threatened both patient safety and operational continuity. Security personnel had cordoned off sections of the building while federal agents coordinated with hospital administrators to establish protocols for managing the cybersecurity incident without disrupting critical patient care services. Dr. Martinez met me at the main entrance, her professional composure barely concealing the stress that healthcare executives experienced when facing threats that could compromise patient outcomes and institutional reputation simultaneously. She wore the kind of practical business attire that medical administrators selected for extended crisis management sessions, knowing that the next 12 hours would require sustained focus on technical details and strategic decision-making. "Elena, thank you for responding so quickly," she said as we walked toward the elevator banks that provided access to the hospital's information technology infrastructure. "The situation has escalated since our phone conversation. The attackers have demonstrated their ability to manipulate surgical scheduling data in ways that suggest they possess administrative access to our core systems." The revelation represented a significant escalation from typical ransomware attacks that encrypted files to demand payment for decryption keys. Administrative access to healthcare systems created opportunities for data manipulation, operational disruption, and patient safety threats that exceeded simple file recovery challenges. Surgical scheduling systems controlled life-or-death resource allocation decisions that could not be restored from backup systems without risking procedural delays that might prove fatal for emergency patients. We entered the elevator that descended to the basement level, housing the hospital's primary server infrastructure and network operations center. The facility represented millions of dollars in investment designed to ensure continuous operation of systems that supported patient monitoring, medication administration, diagnostic imaging, and surgical coordination across the medical center's multiple buildings and specialized departments. The server room environment immediately communicated the seriousness of the cybersecurity incident. The normally pristine facility buzzed with activity as internal IT staff worked alongside FBI cybercrime specialists to isolate affected systems while maintaining critical patient care operations. Multiple computer workstations had been established for forensic analysis, network monitoring, and real-time communication with federal law enforcement agencies coordinating the investigation. Agent Patricia Wong approached as soon as Dr. Martinez and I entered the facility. Her presence indicated that the FBI had classified this incident as part of a larger investigation into organized cybercrime activities targeting healthcare institutions throughout the western United States. The federal involvement suggested connections to international criminal organizations using sophisticated attack methodologies that exceeded the capabilities of opportunistic hackers. "Elena, glad you could join us," Agent Wong said with the professional directness that federal law enforcement officials displayed during active investigations. "We have been tracking this particular criminal organization for 8 months, and your technical expertise has been instrumental in understanding their operational patterns and developing countermeasures that protect victim organizations." The acknowledgement represented recognition of my specialized role in combating healthcare cybercrime, but more significantly, it established my credibility within the crisis response team as someone whose technical capabilities had proven valuable to federal law enforcement agencies. This professional validation would prove crucial as we developed strategies for addressing the immediate threat while supporting the broader criminal investigation. Agent Wong provided a comprehensive briefing on the technical aspects of the attack that revealed the sophistication of the criminal operation. The ransomware had been delivered through a spear phishing email that appeared to originate from a legitimate medical device manufacturer, containing malicious attachments that exploited previously unknown vulnerabilities in the hospital's email security systems. Once inside the network, the attackers had used advanced persistent threat techniques to establish multiple access points throughout the hospital's digital infrastructure, creating redundant pathways that would allow continued system manipulation even if primary intrusion vectors were discovered and eliminated. The surgical scheduling system represented just one component of a comprehensive compromise that potentially affected patient records, billing systems, pharmaceutical inventory management, and diagnostic imaging networks. The technical analysis indicates that we are dealing with a criminal organization that possesses detailed knowledge of healthcare IT infrastructure and regulatory compliance requirements, Agent Wong explained as we examined network traffic logs on multiple computer monitors. They understand which systems are most critical for patient care and which disruptions would create the greatest pressure for ransom payments. The strategic sophistication of the attack demonstrated that the criminals had invested significant resources in understanding healthcare operations, regulatory requirements, and business continuity priorities that would influence institutional decision-making during crisis situations. This level of preparation suggested financial backing and technical expertise that characterized organized cybercrime enterprises rather than individual hackers seeking opportunistic financial gain. Dr. Martinez provided additional context about the specific threats that had been communicated through encrypted messaging channels that the attackers had established within the hospital's own communication systems. The criminals had demonstrated their access capabilities by manipulating surgical schedules for specific procedures, creating documentation errors that could have resulted in wrong site surgeries or medication administration mistakes if the alterations had gone undetected. "They are not simply demanding ransom payment," Dr. Martinez explained while reviewing incident documentation on her tablet computer. "They are threatening to introduce systematic errors into patient care systems that would compromise safety protocols and create liability exposure that could exceed the financial cost of paying their demands." The threat represented a psychological warfare tactic designed to exploit healthcare administrators' primary concern for patient welfare while simultaneously creating legal and financial pressures that would encourage rapid ransom payment rather than extended technical remediation efforts. The criminals understood that healthcare organizations would prioritize patient safety over cost considerations, making them particularly vulnerable to extortion demands that threatened care quality rather than simply operational disruption. I began the technical assessment by examining the network architecture diagrams that revealed how the hospital's various systems interconnected to support integrated patient care operations. The complexity of modern healthcare IT infrastructure created numerous potential attack vectors, but it also provided opportunities for implementing containment strategies that could isolate critical systems while maintaining essential patient care capabilities. The initial analysis focused on identifying the primary access points that the attackers had used to penetrate the network, understanding their lateral movement patterns within the system, and determining which administrative privileges they had obtained to manipulate surgical scheduling data. Each component of this investigation required specialized knowledge of healthcare IT systems, cybersecurity forensics, and criminal investigation techniques that federal agents possessed but might not fully understand in combination. The forensic examination revealed that the attackers had gained access to the network approximately 6 weeks earlier, spending considerable time conducting reconnaissance activities to understand system configurations, user access patterns, and operational procedures before beginning their malicious activities. This extended preparation period indicated patient planning and resource allocation that characterized sophisticated criminal enterprises rather than spontaneous opportunistic attacks. More concerning, the analysis revealed that the criminals had accessed patient records for over 15,000 individuals, including detailed medical histories, insurance information, and personal identification data that could be used for identity theft, insurance fraud, or targeted blackmail schemes against high-profile patients whose medical conditions might create reputational vulnerabilities. The scope of data compromise extends beyond operational disruption. I explained to the crisis response team as we reviewed the technical findings. These criminals have obtained information that could be monetized through multiple channels, including direct ransom demands, identity theft operations, insurance fraud schemes, and targeted extortion against patients whose medical records contain sensitive information. The revelation transformed the incident from a typical ransomware situation into a comprehensive data breach, with implications that extended far beyond the immediate operational disruptions. Healthcare data breaches carried regulatory compliance obligations under HIPAA privacy regulations, potential civil liability from affected patients, and reputational consequences that could influence patient trust and physician recruiting efforts. Dr. Martinez immediately recognized the broader implications of the data compromise and began coordinating with the hospital's legal counsel and public relations team to develop crisis communication strategies that would meet regulatory disclosure requirements while minimizing damage to institutional reputation and patient confidence. The technical remediation strategy required careful coordination between immediate system restoration efforts and the federal investigation activities that needed to preserve digital evidence for criminal prosecution purposes. This balance between operational recovery and law enforcement support created complex decision-making pressures that required both technical expertise and legal guidance. I developed a phased approach that would address the most critical patient safety concerns while maintaining the digital forensic integrity that federal investigators required for building criminal cases against the perpetrators. The strategy prioritized surgical scheduling system restoration, patient record access recovery, and medication administration system security, while preserving network logs and system images that documented the attack methodology and criminal activities. The technical implementation began with isolated network segments that would allow critical patient care systems to operate independently from the compromised infrastructure, while remediation efforts proceeded on the primary network. This approach required reconfiguring multiple system connections and establishing temporary operational procedures that would maintain care quality during the technical restoration process. The work required sustained concentration and systematic problem-solving that drew upon years of experience with healthcare cybersecurity incidents, technical knowledge of hospital IT infrastructure, and understanding of federal investigation requirements that influenced every technical decision. Each system modification needed approval from both medical administrators concerned with patient safety and federal agents focused on preserving evidence for criminal prosecution. By midnight, we had successfully isolated the most critical patient care systems from the compromised network infrastructure and implemented temporary operational procedures that would allow surgical operations to proceed on Monday morning without risking patient safety or compromising the ongoing investigation. The surgical scheduling system had been restored using backup data that predated the attack, with additional security measures implemented to prevent future unauthorized access. The pharmaceutical inventory management system required more extensive restoration efforts because the criminals had introduced subtle alterations to medication dosage calculations that could have resulted in dangerous prescription errors if they had gone undetected. The discovery of these manipulations confirmed that the attackers possessed detailed knowledge of clinical protocols and were willing to threaten patient safety to achieve their financial objectives. Agent Wong coordinated with federal prosecutors to develop charges that would reflect the full scope of criminal activities, including computer fraud, extortion, healthcare fraud, and potentially domestic terrorism charges related to threats against critical infrastructure. The comprehensive evidence package would support prosecution efforts that could result in decades of federal prison sentences for the perpetrators once they were identified and apprehended. The technical success of the remediation effort represented more than simply restoring hospital operations. It demonstrated the value of specialized cybersecurity expertise that could address complex criminal activities while meeting healthcare regulatory requirements and supporting federal law enforcement objectives simultaneously. As dawn approached, the crisis response team had achieved the primary objectives of maintaining patient safety, restoring critical operations, and preserving evidence for federal prosecution efforts. The hospital would be able to resume normal surgical operations on Monday morning, and the attackers had been effectively neutralized without paying ransom demands or compromising institutional integrity. Dr. Martinez approached as I completed the final system security verifications that would ensure continued protection against future attacks. Her expression reflected both professional relief and personal gratitude for technical expertise that had prevented a catastrophic disruption of patient care services. "Elena, I cannot adequately express our appreciation for your work tonight," she said with the kind of genuine gratitude that healthcare administrators reserved for professionals who had prevented genuine crises. "Your technical capabilities and strategic approach have protected thousands of patients and preserved our institutional reputation during what could have been a devastating situation." The acknowledgement represented recognition of the specialized value that cybersecurity consulting provided to healthcare organizations facing sophisticated criminal threats. More importantly, it established my professional reputation among healthcare executives and federal law enforcement officials who would serve as referral sources for future emergency consulting opportunities. As I prepared to leave Pacific Medical Center after 18 hours of intensive technical work, I reflected on the contrast between the professional recognition I had earned during the cybersecurity crisis and the social dismissal I had experienced at Tyler's birthday party just 24 hours earlier. The same specialized knowledge that made me invaluable during healthcare emergencies remained invisible to family members who measured success through conventional status indicators rather than professional capability and societal contribution. The irony would soon become apparent when the success of the Pacific Medical Center incident response generated media attention and professional recognition that would fundamentally alter how Victoria and her social circle understood my actual accomplishments and professional standing in the cybersecurity community. The exhaustion from 18 continuous hours of technical work at Pacific Medical Center had settled deep into my bones as I finally returned to my Mission District Department at 8:30 Monday morning. The contrast between the high-stakes cybersecurity crisis and the quiet normalcy of my residential neighborhood provided psychological decompression that emergency consultants learned to value after extended crisis engagements. The familiar sounds of morning commuters and corner coffee shops offered reassurance that normal life continued, despite the digital warfare that had consumed my weekend. I had barely settled into my apartment when my phone began displaying notifications that indicated something significant had changed in the professional landscape surrounding the Pacific Medical Center incident. The first alert came from Google News, flagging an article in the San Francisco Chronicle with the headline, "Local Cybersecurity Expert Prevents Hospital Ransomware Crisis, Protects Thousands of Patients." The article had been published at 6:15 that morning, suggesting that the hospital's public relations team had coordinated with federal law enforcement agencies to release information about the successful incident response while the investigation remained active. Healthcare organizations typically maintained strict confidentiality about cybersecurity incidents to avoid encouraging additional attacks, but the scope of this particular threat and the successful resolution had created an opportunity for positive public messaging about cybersecurity preparedness and professional expertise. I opened the full article on my laptop and immediately recognized that the coverage extended far beyond typical healthcare industry reporting. The Chronicle had positioned the story as a feature about local cybersecurity expertise, protecting critical community infrastructure, emphasizing both the sophistication of the criminal threat and the specialized knowledge required to neutralize advanced persistent threats against healthcare systems. The article included direct quotes from Dr. Martinez praising my technical capabilities and strategic approach during the crisis response. More significantly, it featured comments from Agent Wong highlighting my previous collaboration with federal law enforcement agencies and my established reputation among cybersecurity professionals who specialized in healthcare system protection. Elena Sterling represents the kind of specialized expertise that organizations need when facing sophisticated cybercrime attacks that exceed the capabilities of traditional IT support or corporate consulting firms. Agent Wong was quoted as saying, "Her technical knowledge and experience with healthcare cybersecurity incidents have been instrumental in protecting patient safety and institutional operations during multiple crisis situations." The federal endorsement carried particular weight because it came from a law enforcement official whose credibility was established through years of successful cybercrime investigations. Agent Wong's comments positioned my consulting practice not as freelance computer work, but as specialized expertise that federal agencies valued for addressing threats to critical infrastructure and public safety. The article continued with technical details about the ransomware attack that demonstrated the sophistication of the criminal operation and the complexity of the response that had been required to neutralize the threat without compromising patient care or federal investigation activities. The coverage emphasized that the successful resolution had prevented potential disruption of surgical operations for thousands of patients, while supporting prosecution efforts that could result in significant prison sentences for the perpetrators. By 9:30, additional media outlets had begun following the story with their own reporting and analysis. The San Jose Mercury News published a feature about the growing threat of healthcare cybercrime and the specialized consultants who protected medical institutions from increasingly sophisticated attacks. The article positioned me as a representative example of the cybersecurity professionals who served as the first line of defense against criminal organizations targeting critical community services. Local television stations had also picked up the story, with KPIX5 scheduling an interview for later that afternoon to discuss healthcare cybersecurity threats and the technical capabilities required to address advanced criminal activities. The media attention reflected growing public awareness about cybersecurity risks and appreciation for professionals who protected essential community services from digital threats. The professional recognition extended beyond traditional media coverage. My LinkedIn profile began receiving connection requests from healthcare executives, federal law enforcement officials, and cybersecurity professionals who wanted to establish professional relationships with someone who had demonstrated proven capabilities during high-profile crisis situations. The cybersecurity industry associations that I belong to began sharing the news coverage through their professional networks, amplifying the reach of the positive publicity and positioning me as a thought leader whose expertise commanded respect among established professionals in the field. The Healthcare Information Management Systems Society featured my success story in their weekly newsletter, reaching thousands of healthcare IT professionals throughout the nation. More tangible evidence of professional recognition began arriving through direct client inquiries. By noon, I had received preliminary consultation requests from 6 healthcare organizations that wanted to conduct cybersecurity assessments based on the Pacific Medical Center success story. Each potential engagement represented substantial consulting fees and the opportunity to build long-term client relationships with organizations that prioritized cybersecurity preparedness. The volume and quality of these inquiries demonstrated that the media coverage had effectively communicated the value proposition that specialized cybersecurity consulting provided to healthcare organizations facing increasingly sophisticated criminal threats. The professional recognition was translating directly into business development opportunities that would expand my consulting practice and establish my reputation among healthcare executives throughout the region. At approximately 2:15, while I was reviewing technical proposals for the new consultation requests, my phone displayed an incoming call from Victoria. The timing was unexpected because we typically communicated through text messages, except during family emergencies or special occasions that required more extensive coordination. "Elena, I just saw the article about you in the Chronicle," Victoria said as soon as I answered the call. Her tone carried a mixture of surprise and confusion that suggested she was still processing the disconnect between the media coverage and her assumptions about my professional circumstances. "I had no idea you were involved in such important work." The comment revealed the extent to which Victoria had remained unaware of my actual professional accomplishments, despite our ongoing family relationship. The media coverage had provided her first comprehensive understanding of the specialized expertise I had developed, and the critical community services that my consulting practice protected during cybersecurity emergencies. The Pacific Medical Center incident was definitely one of the more complex situations I have addressed. I replied, maintaining professional modesty while acknowledging the significance of the successful crisis response. Healthcare cybersecurity has become increasingly challenging as criminal organizations develop more sophisticated attack methodologies. Victoria's questions continued for several minutes as she sought to understand how my consulting practice had evolved to address such high-level security threats, and why she had remained unaware of my professional recognition among healthcare executives and federal law enforcement agencies. Her tone reflected genuine curiosity rather than skepticism, suggesting that the media coverage had fundamentally altered her perception of my career trajectory and professional capabilities. "The article makes it sound like you are one of the leading cybersecurity experts in the region," she said with something approaching awe in her voice. "Agent Wong's comments were incredibly impressive, and Dr. Martinez described your work as essential for protecting patient safety during the crisis." The conversation represented a significant shift in how Victoria understood my professional status. The federal endorsement and healthcare executive recognition had provided external validation that transcended her previous assumptions about consulting work being unstable or transitional employment. The media coverage had positioned me as a recognized expert whose capabilities were valued by established institutions and government agencies. Victoria's next comment revealed the implications this recognition would have for her social circle and the assumptions they had made about my professional circumstances during Tyler's birthday party. "Richard is going to be very interested in this article. Several of his business associates have been concerned about cybersecurity threats to their operations, and they have been looking for qualified consultants who could address sophisticated security challenges." The professional networking opportunity that Victoria was suggesting represented the kind of business development that typically required years of relationship building and credibility establishment. The media coverage had accelerated this process by providing third-party validation from respected sources that communicated my expertise to potential clients who might otherwise have been skeptical about independent consulting services. More significantly, Victoria's response indicated that the social dynamics that had characterized Tyler's birthday party were about to change dramatically. The guests who had politely dismissed me as someone who was still figuring out her career path would soon discover that they had overlooked a cybersecurity expert whose professional capabilities exceeded their understanding, and whose client relationships included major healthcare institutions and federal law enforcement agencies. The conversation with Victoria concluded with her request to share my contact information with Richard's business associates who might benefit from cybersecurity consulting services. The transition from diplomatic family management to active professional referral represented a complete reversal of the social positioning that had characterized our recent interactions. After ending the call with Victoria, I spent the remainder of the afternoon preparing for the television interview that would further amplify the professional recognition that had emerged from the Pacific Medical Center incident response. The media appearances required careful balance between promoting cybersecurity awareness and maintaining the professional discretion that client relationships demanded. The KPIX-5 interview focused on educating viewers about healthcare cybersecurity threats and the specialized expertise required to protect medical institutions from criminal attacks. The coverage emphasized the community benefit that cybersecurity professionals provided by protecting essential services and supporting law enforcement efforts to prosecute criminal organizations. The professional exposure continued to generate additional media coverage throughout the week. The San Francisco Business Times published a feature article about local cybersecurity entrepreneurs who were building successful practices by addressing sophisticated criminal threats against community organizations. The article positioned my consulting practice as an example of how specialized technical expertise could create sustainable business opportunities while providing essential community services. Professional associations began extending invitations for speaking engagements at conferences and educational events, where cybersecurity experts shared knowledge about emerging threats and best practices for protecting critical infrastructure. These opportunities represented additional revenue streams and professional networking activities that would continue to build my reputation and expand my client base. The week concluded with a consultation request from Morrison Holdings, the family investment firm that owned the estate where Tyler's birthday party had been held. James Morrison had personally requested a comprehensive cybersecurity assessment for his business operations after learning about my professional background and the successful resolution of the Pacific Medical Center crisis. The irony was perfect. The same person who had made polite conversation about my consulting work, while assuming it represented minor technical services, was now seeking my professional expertise to protect his family's substantial business interests from sophisticated cybersecurity threats. The professional recognition that had emerged from a single weekend of intensive technical work had fundamentally transformed my standing within the healthcare community, federal law enforcement circles, and by extension, the social environment that Victoria navigated through her marriage to the Blackstone family. The specialized knowledge that had remained invisible during casual social conversations was now commanding respect and generating substantial business opportunities from the same community that had previously dismissed my professional circumstances. The transformation demonstrated that authentic expertise eventually receives recognition when circumstances create opportunities for its value to become apparent to those who had previously failed to recognize its significance. The transformation of professional perception had accelerated beyond my initial expectations by Thursday morning of the week following the Pacific Medical Center incident. The media coverage had generated a cascade of recognition that extended through professional networks and social circles, in ways that demonstrated how quickly authentic expertise could reshape established assumptions about individual capability and professional standing. The morning began with an unexpected phone call from Dr. Rebecca Chen, the Chief Technology Officer at Kaiser Permanente, one of the largest healthcare systems in Northern California. Her organization had been monitoring the cybersecurity landscape following several high-profile attacks on regional medical institutions, and the success of the Pacific Medical Center incident response had positioned me as a priority consultant for their institutional security assessment needs. Ms. Sterling, we have been following your work with great interest, Dr. Chen said during our initial consultation discussion. The technical approach you implemented at Pacific Medical Center demonstrates exactly the kind of sophisticated expertise that our organization requires for addressing advanced persistent threats to our healthcare delivery systems. The consultation request from Kaiser Permanente represented a significant escalation in the scope and scale of potential client engagements. Their healthcare system served over 12 million patients across multiple states, with digital infrastructure that supported hundreds of medical facilities, thousands of healthcare providers, and clinical operations that processed sensitive medical information for populations that exceeded the size of many entire metropolitan areas. The technical complexity and regulatory compliance requirements for cybersecurity consulting at Kaiser Permanente's scale would require expanded service delivery capabilities and specialized expertise that exceeded typical consulting practice parameters. The opportunity represented potential annual consulting fees that could exceed the total revenue I had generated during the previous 3 years of independent practice. Dr. Chen's inquiry had been prompted by recommendations from healthcare industry colleagues who had learned about my professional capabilities through the media coverage and professional association networks. The referral chain demonstrated how successful crisis response could generate recognition that transcended individual client relationships to establish broader reputation within industry communities. We are particularly interested in your experience with federal law enforcement coordination during cybersecurity incidents, Dr. Chen continued. Our legal and compliance teams have emphasized the importance of working with consultants who understand both technical remediation and regulatory reporting requirements for healthcare data breaches. Quote, the federal law enforcement collaboration that had characterized the Pacific Medical Center response represented a specialized capability that distinguished my consulting practice from larger corporate firms that typically focused on technical solutions without understanding the complex coordination requirements that healthcare organizations faced during cybersecurity incidents involving potential criminal prosecution. The conversation with Dr. Chen concluded with scheduling for a comprehensive presentation to Kaiser Permanente's executive leadership team that would evaluate my consulting services for a potential enterprise-wide cybersecurity assessment and incident response partnership. The presentation opportunity represented the kind of institutional recognition that could establish my practice as a preferred vendor for major healthcare systems throughout the region. Following the Kaiser Permanente call, I received a series of additional inquiries that demonstrated the expanding reach of professional recognition within healthcare industry networks. The California Hospital Association had requested my participation in a statewide cybersecurity conference, where I would present the Pacific Medical Center case study as a model for effective incident response coordination between healthcare organizations, cybersecurity consultants, and federal law enforcement agencies. Professional speaking engagements represented both additional revenue opportunities and platform development activities that could establish thought leadership within the cybersecurity community. The California Hospital Association conference would provide exposure to hundreds of healthcare executives who were responsible for cybersecurity preparedness at medical institutions throughout the state. The Healthcare Information Management Systems Society had extended an invitation to participate in their National Cybersecurity Summit in Chicago, where I would join a panel discussion about emerging threats to healthcare infrastructure and best practices for protecting patient safety during sophisticated cyber attacks. The national platform would position me among recognized experts whose capabilities were acknowledged at the highest levels of healthcare industry leadership. By mid-afternoon, the volume of professional inquiries had begun to exceed my capacity for individual response management. The recognition that had emerged from successful crisis response was generating business development opportunities that required strategic evaluation and systematic prioritization based on client potential, professional development value, and alignment with long-term practice growth objectives. The transformation was particularly evident in the quality and source of referral inquiries I was receiving. Rather than cold outreach or competitive bidding processes that characterized typical consulting business development, potential clients were contacting me based on recommendations from established healthcare executives, federal law enforcement officials, and cybersecurity industry leaders who could personally attest to my professional capabilities. The referral-based business development represented the kind of professional recognition that typically required years of relationship building and credibility establishment within industry networks. The media coverage had accelerated this process by providing third-party validation from respected sources that communicated expertise to potential clients who might otherwise have required extensive vetting before engaging independent consulting services. At approximately 4:30 Thursday afternoon, my phone displayed an incoming call from Margaret Chen, the woman I had met briefly at Tyler's birthday party. Her husband's law firm represented several healthcare organizations, and she had apparently learned about my professional background through the recent media coverage and industry recognition. "Elena, I hope you remember meeting me at Tyler's party last weekend," Margaret said with a tone that carried both professional interest and personal curiosity about the disconnect between our previous interaction and her recent discovery of my actual professional accomplishments. "I have been reading about your cybersecurity expertise, and I wanted to discuss potential consulting opportunities." The conversation represented a complete reversal of the social dynamics that had characterized our brief interaction at the birthday celebration. During the party, Margaret had engaged in polite conversation while clearly assuming that my consulting work represented minor technical services rather than specialized expertise that commanded substantial fees and professional recognition. Margaret explained that her husband's law firm had been advising several healthcare clients about cybersecurity compliance requirements and incident response planning. The recent media coverage about my work with Pacific Medical Center had prompted discussions about engaging specialized consultants who could provide technical expertise that exceeded the capabilities of their internal IT departments. The partners at the firm have been particularly impressed by the federal law enforcement endorsements and the successful resolution of such a complex cybersecurity crisis. Margaret continued, "We have been looking for consultants who can address sophisticated threats while meeting regulatory compliance obligations and supporting potential criminal prosecution activities." The professional inquiry from Margaret represented validation that the media coverage had effectively communicated the specialized value proposition that my consulting practice provided to healthcare organizations facing advanced cybersecurity threats. More significantly, it demonstrated how professional recognition could transform relationships with individuals who had previously dismissed my capabilities based on superficial social interactions. Margaret's law firm represented exactly the kind of referral source that could generate sustained business development opportunities with healthcare organizations throughout the Bay Area. Legal firms that specialized in healthcare industry representation maintained ongoing relationships with hospital executives, medical practice administrators, and institutional decision-makers who required cybersecurity consulting services. The conversation concluded with Margaret requesting a comprehensive presentation about my consulting services for the firm's healthcare practice group. The presentation would provide an opportunity to establish professional relationships with attorneys who advised healthcare clients about cybersecurity preparedness and incident response planning. Following the call with Margaret Chen, I received an unexpected text message from Victoria requesting a meeting to discuss professional opportunities that had emerged through her social network following the media coverage about my cybersecurity expertise. The message represented a significant shift in our relationship dynamic, with Victoria now actively seeking to leverage my professional reputation for mutual networking benefit. Several people from Tyler's party have been asking about your consulting services, Victoria's text message explained. Richard thinks it would be beneficial for everyone if we could arrange some introductions that might lead to business opportunities. The message revealed that the media coverage had reached Victoria's social circle and generated curiosity about professional capabilities that had remained invisible during casual party conversations. The guests who had politely dismissed me as someone who was still figuring out her career path were now interested in accessing expertise that they had failed to recognize during our previous interactions. Victoria's request to facilitate professional introductions represented a complete transformation of her approach to managing my presence within her elevated social environment. Rather than diplomatically minimizing potential social complications from my presumed lack of professional achievement, she was now positioning my specialized expertise as a valuable resource for her established social network. The irony extended beyond simple professional misunderstanding to reveal fundamental assumptions about how expertise and success were communicated and recognized within different social contexts. The same specialized knowledge that made me invaluable during healthcare cybersecurity crises had been invisible to people who measured professional accomplishment through conventional markers rather than actual capability and societal contribution. Friday morning brought additional evidence of the expanding professional recognition that had emerged from the Pacific Medical Center incident response. The San Francisco Business Journal published a follow-up article positioning me as a representative example of successful independent consultants who had built specialized practices by addressing sophisticated challenges that exceeded the capabilities of larger corporate service providers. The article emphasized the business model advantages that specialized consulting could provide to clients who required immediate access to expertise rather than extended engagement processes that characterized traditional corporate consulting relationships. The coverage highlighted the premium rates that emergency cybersecurity consulting commanded and the client retention benefits that resulted from successful crisis response. Professional associations continued to amplify the recognition through their industry communications and networking platforms. The International Association of Healthcare Security Professionals featured my Pacific Medical Center success story in their monthly newsletter, reaching thousands of healthcare security professionals throughout North America who were responsible for protecting medical institutions from cybersecurity threats. The expanding recognition was generating inquiries from healthcare organizations beyond the immediate Bay Area region. Medical centers in Los Angeles, Seattle, and Denver had initiated preliminary discussions about cybersecurity consulting services based on recommendations from industry colleagues who had learned about my capabilities through professional networks and media coverage. The geographic expansion of potential client relationships represented opportunities for substantial practice growth that could establish my consulting services as a regional resource for healthcare cybersecurity crisis response. The development would require operational scaling and service delivery capabilities that exceeded current practice parameters but offered potential for significant revenue growth and professional recognition. By the end of the week, the transformation of professional perception had created business development opportunities that exceeded my immediate capacity for service delivery. The recognition that had emerged from successful crisis response was generating client inquiries that would require strategic evaluation and systematic expansion of consulting practice capabilities. The success demonstrated that authentic expertise eventually receives recognition when circumstances create opportunities for its value to become apparent to communities that had previously failed to understand its significance. The specialized knowledge that had remained invisible during casual social interactions was now commanding respect and generating substantial business opportunities from the same professional networks that had previously dismissed my capabilities. The week concluded with confirmation that James Morrison had scheduled a comprehensive cybersecurity assessment for his family's investment firm based on his recognition of expertise that had been completely overlooked during our brief interaction at Tyler's birthday party. The professional engagement represented perfect validation that competence transcends social assumptions when circumstances allow genuine capability to demonstrate its value to those who had initially failed to recognize its significance. The boardroom at Blackstone Partners occupied the 42nd floor of One Market Plaza, offering panoramic views of San Francisco Bay that served as a reminder of the economic power concentrated within the city's financial district. Richard had arranged for me to present my cybersecurity consulting services to a select group of business leaders from his professional network. Following Victoria's suggestion that my recent media recognition might generate valuable opportunities for mutual benefit, the meeting had been scheduled for 9 o'clock on Tuesday morning, precisely 1 week after the Pacific Medical Center media coverage had transformed my professional visibility within the Bay Area business community. The timing was strategic, allowing the participants to review the newspaper articles and industry coverage that had established my credentials as a cybersecurity expert, capable of addressing sophisticated threats to critical infrastructure operations. As I entered the elegant conference room, I recognized several faces from Tyler's birthday party, though their demeanor toward me had shifted dramatically from the polite dismissal that had characterized our previous interactions. Margaret Chen greeted me with professional warmth that reflected genuine interest in my consulting capabilities, rather than the diplomatic courtesy she had displayed during our brief party conversation. James Morrison approached with the focused attention that successful investors directed toward potential business opportunities, his earlier casual questions about my consulting work replaced by specific inquiries about my experience with financial services, cybersecurity, and regulatory compliance requirements. The transformation in his engagement level demonstrated how professional recognition could alter relationship dynamics when authentic expertise became apparent to people who possessed the knowledge to evaluate its significance. Richard positioned himself at the head of the conference table, clearly proud of his role in facilitating the introductions that would connect his business associates with specialized expertise they required for protecting their operations from increasingly sophisticated cyber threats. His opening remarks established the context for my presentation while emphasizing the credibility that federal law enforcement endorsements and healthcare industry recognition had provided to my consulting practice. Elena's recent work with Pacific Medical Center and her collaboration with federal cybercrime investigators represent exactly the kind of expertise that our organizations need for addressing advanced persistent threats, Richard explained to the assembled group. The successful resolution of such a complex incident demonstrates technical capabilities that extend far beyond typical IT consulting services. The introduction represented a complete reversal of the social positioning that had characterized family gatherings prior to the media recognition. Rather than diplomatically managing potential complications from my presumed professional limitations, Richard was actively promoting my specialized knowledge as a valuable resource for his established business network. I began the presentation by providing context about the evolving cybersecurity threat landscape that organizations faced, particularly the sophisticated criminal enterprises that targeted financial services, healthcare systems, and critical infrastructure, with advanced attack methodologies that exceeded the capabilities of traditional IT security measures. The technical overview established the complexity of challenges that required specialized consulting expertise rather than generic corporate cybersecurity services. The Pacific Medical Center case study served as the centerpiece of my presentation, demonstrating both the technical sophistication required to address advanced ransomware attacks and the coordination capabilities necessary for working with federal law enforcement agencies during criminal investigations. The detailed analysis of attack vectors, remediation strategies, and successful outcomes provided concrete evidence of expertise that could protect critical business operations from existential cybersecurity threats. Margaret Chen asked the first substantive question about regulatory compliance requirements for healthcare organizations that experienced data breaches, revealing her detailed knowledge of legal obligations that accompanied cybersecurity incidents in heavily regulated industries. Her question demonstrated professional engagement that contrasted sharply with the superficial conversation we had shared at Tyler's party when she had assumed my consulting work represented minor technical services. The coordination between technical remediation and regulatory compliance becomes particularly complex when federal criminal investigations are involved. Quote, I explained, addressing both the technical and legal aspects of healthcare cybersecurity incident response. Healthcare organizations must balance operational recovery priorities with evidence preservation requirements while meeting disclosure obligations under HIPAA privacy regulations and state breach notification laws. The comprehensive answer revealed specialized knowledge that extended beyond technical cybersecurity expertise to encompass regulatory compliance, legal coordination, and business continuity planning that healthcare organizations required during crisis situations. The depth of understanding demonstrated capabilities that exceeded typical consulting services and justified premium rates for emergency incident response. James Morrison followed with questions about cybersecurity threats to investment management operations, specifically inquiring about protection strategies for client financial data and proprietary trading information that criminal organizations might target for market manipulation or identity theft schemes. His questions reflected sophisticated understanding of financial services vulnerabilities and genuine interest in implementing protective measures for his family's investment firm. Investment management firms face unique challenges because they handle sensitive financial information that has immediate monetary value to criminal organizations. I responded, tailoring my explanation to address the specific threat vectors that financial services organizations encountered. The combination of client personal data, investment portfolio information, and trading strategies creates multiple attack surfaces that require coordinated protection through technical controls, employee training, and incident response planning. The specialized knowledge about financial services cybersecurity demonstrated versatility in addressing industry-specific threats, while maintaining the technical depth that sophisticated business leaders required for evaluating consulting services. The ability to discuss complex cybersecurity challenges across multiple industries established credibility with potential clients who operated in different sectors but faced similar underlying threats. Dr. Patricia Hoffman, a prominent cardiologist whose private practice served high-profile clients throughout the Bay Area, asked about cybersecurity requirements for medical practices that handled sensitive patient information but lacked the IT resources that larger healthcare systems possessed for addressing sophisticated cyber threats. Her question revealed concern about regulatory compliance obligations and patient privacy protection that small medical practices faced with limited technical expertise. Small medical practices represent particularly attractive targets for cybercriminals because they handle valuable patient data but typically lack the cybersecurity resources that larger healthcare institutions deploy. I explained, addressing both the threat landscape and practical solutions that smaller organizations could implement. However, regulatory compliance requirements remain the same regardless of practice size, making specialized cybersecurity consulting essential for protecting patient privacy and avoiding potential HIPAA violations. The discussion continued for over an hour as participants asked increasingly detailed questions about specific cybersecurity challenges their organizations faced and potential solutions that my consulting services could provide. The quality of inquiries demonstrated sophisticated understanding of cybersecurity risks and genuine appreciation for specialized expertise that could address complex threats to their business operations. The depth of engagement contrasted dramatically with the polite but superficial conversations that had characterized Tyler's birthday party, where these same individuals had dismissed my consulting work as unstable employment, rather than recognizing the specialized expertise that their own organizations required for protecting critical operations from sophisticated cyber threats. Following the formal presentation, participants began requesting individual consultations to discuss specific cybersecurity requirements for their respective organizations. Margaret Chen scheduled a follow-up meeting to explore potential consulting services for her husband's law firm and their healthcare clients. James Morrison requested a comprehensive cybersecurity assessment for Morrison Holdings investment operations. Dr. Hoffman inquired about regulatory compliance consulting for her cardiology practice. The immediate business development results from the presentation exceeded my expectations for client acquisition from a single networking event. The combination of media recognition, federal law enforcement endorsements, and detailed technical expertise had created credibility that generated substantial consulting opportunities from a carefully curated group of sophisticated business leaders. Richard approached as the other participants were concluding their scheduling discussions, expressing satisfaction with the successful outcome of the professional introductions he had facilitated through his business network connections. Elena, this has been exactly the kind of productive networking that benefits everyone involved. Richard said with genuine enthusiasm about the professional opportunities that had emerged from the presentation. Your expertise addresses real business needs that our organizations face, and your technical capabilities clearly exceed anything we could access through traditional corporate consulting services. The acknowledgement represented validation from someone whose business judgment commanded respect within San Francisco's financial community. Richard's endorsement would influence how other successful business leaders evaluated my consulting services and potentially generate additional referral opportunities through his extensive professional network. Victoria had observed the presentation from the back of the conference room, witnessing the professional recognition and business development success that demonstrated capabilities she had not previously understood or appreciated. Her expression reflected a mixture of pride and surprise as she processed the disconnect between her assumptions about my professional circumstances and the sophisticated expertise that had generated immediate business opportunities with established industry leaders. Following the presentation, Victoria approached with the kind of genuine enthusiasm that reflected both sisterly support and recognition of professional achievement that exceeded her previous understanding of my capabilities and industry reputation. Elena, I had no idea that your consulting work involved such complex technical expertise and important community services, Victoria said with authentic admiration for accomplishments that had remained invisible during our recent family interactions. The federal law enforcement collaboration and healthcare industry recognition represent achievements that clearly establish your professional standing at the highest levels of your field. The conversation represented a fundamental shift in how Victoria understood my career trajectory and professional accomplishments. The media coverage and business development success had provided external validation that transcended her previous assumptions about consulting work representing transitional employment, rather than specialized expertise that commanded substantial fees and industry recognition. Victoria's recognition was particularly meaningful because it came from someone whose opinion had influenced my self-perception during periods when professional accomplishments remained invisible to family members, who measured success through conventional markers rather than actual capability and societal contribution. The presentation concluded with scheduling individual consultations with 6 potential clients who represented diverse industries but shared common requirements for sophisticated cybersecurity expertise that could address advanced threats while meeting regulatory compliance obligations. The business development success demonstrated that specialized technical knowledge eventually receives appropriate recognition when circumstances create opportunities for its value to become apparent to people who possess the knowledge to evaluate its significance. As I gathered my presentation materials and prepared to leave One Market Plaza, I reflected on the transformation that had occurred during the past week. The same individuals who had politely dismissed me as Victoria's sister, who was still figuring out her career path, had just scheduled consulting engagements that would generate substantial professional fees while protecting their organizations from sophisticated cybersecurity threats. The success represented validation that competence transcends social assumptions when circumstances allow genuine capability to demonstrate its value to those who had initially failed to recognize its significance. The specialized expertise that had remained invisible during casual social interactions was now commanding respect and generating substantial business opportunities from the same professional community that had previously overlooked my capabilities. The morning's presentation had established my consulting practice as a recognized resource within San Francisco's business community, with referral relationships and industry connections that would support sustained growth and continued professional recognition among the region's most sophisticated organizational leaders. The immediate aftermath of the Blackstone Partners presentation revealed the exponential nature of professional recognition within established business networks. Within 48 hours of the Tuesday morning meeting, I had received consultation requests from 12 additional organizations, including several Fortune 500 companies whose cybersecurity requirements exceeded the scope of services I had previously provided to regional healthcare systems and financial services firms. The expansion of potential client relationships demonstrated how successful presentations to influential business leaders could generate referral opportunities that transcended geographic and industry boundaries. Richard Blackstone had shared information about my consulting capabilities with his venture capital partners, who maintained investment relationships with technology companies throughout Silicon Valley that required sophisticated cybersecurity expertise for protecting intellectual property and maintaining competitive advantages. Goldman Sachs contacted me Thursday morning through a referral from James Morrison, requesting a comprehensive cybersecurity assessment for their San Francisco operations that managed investment portfolios for ultra-high net worth individuals whose financial information represented premium targets for sophisticated cybercriminal organizations. The engagement would require security clearances and specialized protocols for protecting financial data that exceeded typical regulatory compliance requirements. The Goldman Sachs inquiry represented a significant escalation in both client prestige and technical complexity compared to previous consulting engagements. Investment banking operations processed sensitive financial information that criminal organizations could exploit for market manipulation, insider trading schemes, or targeted extortion against wealthy individuals whose investment activities might create reputational vulnerabilities. Dr. Sarah Chen, the Chief Information Officer at UCSF Medical Center, requested an urgent consultation following recommendations from healthcare industry colleagues who had learned about my Pacific Medical Center success through professional association networks. UCSF represented one of the most prominent academic medical centers in the nation, with research operations that generated intellectual property worth hundreds of millions of dollars in pharmaceutical development and medical device innovations. The UCSF engagement would require specialized knowledge of research data protection, intellectual property security, and academic medical center operations that combined patient care with scientific research activities. The technical complexity and institutional prestige associated with UCSF consulting would establish credibility within academic medicine that could generate additional opportunities with medical schools and research institutions throughout the country. Cisco Systems contacted me through their corporate security division, following a referral from federal law enforcement contacts who had recommended my services for addressing advanced persistent threats against critical infrastructure providers. Cisco's global operations required cybersecurity consultants who understood both technical attack vectors and the geopolitical implications of state-sponsored cybercrime activities targeting American technology companies. The Cisco inquiry represented entry into the cybersecurity consulting market for major technology corporations whose operations supported critical infrastructure throughout the United States and international markets. The scope of potential engagement would require security clearances, technical expertise, and strategic understanding that positioned cybersecurity threats within broader national security contexts. By Friday afternoon, the volume of high-level consultation requests had begun to exceed my individual capacity for service delivery, requiring strategic decisions about client prioritization and potential expansion of consulting practice operations. The recognition that had emerged from successful healthcare cybersecurity incident response was generating business opportunities that exceeded the operational parameters of independent consulting practice. The transformation required careful evaluation of growth strategies that could maintain service quality while expanding capability to address sophisticated cybersecurity challenges for major corporations and institutional clients. The decision involved balancing immediate revenue opportunities against long-term reputation management and sustainable practice development objectives. Victoria called Friday evening to discuss the professional opportunities that had emerged from the business network introductions she had facilitated through Richard's connections. Her tone reflected genuine pride in my accomplishments and recognition of expertise that had generated immediate business development success with established industry leaders. Elena, Richard has been receiving calls throughout the week from his business associates who want to engage your consulting services, Victoria said with enthusiasm that demonstrated her understanding of the significance of professional recognition I had achieved. The presentation apparently made a very strong impression, and several people mentioned that your expertise exceeded anything they had encountered through traditional corporate consulting relationships. The feedback from Richard's business network provided validation that the presentation had effectively communicated specialized capabilities that distinguished my consulting services from larger corporate cybersecurity firms. The recognition was particularly meaningful because it came from sophisticated business leaders, whose evaluation criteria reflected deep understanding of cybersecurity challenges and consulting service quality. Victoria continued with information about additional networking opportunities that had emerged through her social connections following the media coverage and professional presentation success. The San Francisco Symphony Board had requested my participation in a cybersecurity planning committee that would protect patron information and financial systems from sophisticated cyber threats targeting cultural institutions. The San Francisco Symphony engagement represented expansion into nonprofit sector cybersecurity consulting that required understanding of donor privacy protection, fundraising system security, and cultural institution operations that managed sensitive personal information for wealthy patrons whose philanthropic activities might create privacy vulnerabilities. Margaret Chen had recommended my services to several healthcare law firms that represented medical institutions throughout Northern California, creating potential referral relationships that could generate sustained business development opportunities within the legal sector that specialized in healthcare industry representation. The legal sector referrals represented strategic business development because healthcare attorneys maintained ongoing relationships with hospital executives, medical practice administrators, and institutional decision-makers who required cybersecurity consulting services for regulatory compliance and incident response planning. The weekend provided opportunity for strategic evaluation of the expansion options that had emerged from successful professional recognition within San Francisco's business community. The consultation requests represented potential annual revenue that exceeded my previous financial projections for independent consulting practice. But they also required operational capabilities that transcended individual service delivery. The strategic analysis revealed 3 primary expansion pathways that could address the volume and complexity of client inquiries while maintaining service quality standards that had generated professional recognition within healthcare, financial services, and technology industry networks. The first expansion option involved selective client engagement that prioritized prestigious institutional relationships and premium consulting fees, while maintaining independent practice operations that could deliver specialized services without requiring significant overhead investments or administrative complexity. The second expansion pathway involved strategic partnerships with established cybersecurity consulting firms that possessed operational infrastructure and technical capabilities that could support enterprise-level client engagements, while allowing me to maintain specialized expertise and client relationship management responsibilities. The third expansion strategy involved building a specialized cybersecurity consulting firm that could hire additional technical experts and support staff, while maintaining the agility and client focus that distinguished boutique consulting services from large corporate cybersecurity providers. Monday morning brought confirmation that the expansion decision could not be postponed indefinitely. Kaiser Permanente had scheduled a comprehensive presentation for their executive leadership team, Goldman Sachs required immediate security assessment services, and UCSF had requested urgent consultation about research data protection requirements that could not be delayed without compromising ongoing scientific research projects. The simultaneous demands from multiple prestigious clients represented both validation of professional expertise and practical challenges that required immediate expansion of service delivery capabilities. The success had created opportunities that exceeded individual capacity, while establishing reputation that could support sustained growth within the cybersecurity consulting industry. Dr. Martinez contacted me Monday afternoon with information about additional healthcare industry recognition that had emerged from professional association networks following the Pacific Medical Center incident response success. The American Hospital Association had requested my participation in a national cybersecurity task force that would develop best practices for healthcare organizations facing sophisticated cyber threats. The national healthcare industry recognition represented platform opportunities that could establish thought leadership within the medical sector while generating consulting opportunities with healthcare systems throughout the United States. The visibility would position my expertise within industry discussions about cybersecurity preparedness and regulatory compliance requirements. The Healthcare Information Management Systems Society had extended an invitation to deliver the keynote presentation at their annual cybersecurity conference, addressing an audience of over 3,000 healthcare IT professionals who are responsible for protecting patient data and medical systems from cyber threats. The keynote speaking opportunity represented the highest level of professional recognition within healthcare cybersecurity, establishing credibility that could generate consulting opportunities with medical institutions throughout North America, while positioning my expertise among the most respected professionals in the specialized field. federal law enforcement agencies had begun referring cybersecurity incident response opportunities that exceeded the geographical scope of previous engagements. The FBI's Cybercrime Division had recommended my services for healthcare organizations in Los Angeles, Seattle, and Denver that were facing sophisticated attacks similar to the Pacific Medical Center incident. The federal referrals represented expansion into regional and national consulting markets that could establish my practice as a preferred resource for healthcare cybersecurity incident response throughout the western United States. The geographic expansion would require operational capabilities and travel logistics that exceeded current practice parameters. By Tuesday afternoon, the combination of client demands, speaking opportunities, and federal law enforcement referrals had created a professional situation that required immediate strategic decisions about practice expansion and service delivery capabilities. Victoria called Tuesday evening to discuss family dinner arrangements for the upcoming weekend, but the conversation quickly shifted to professional recognition and business development opportunities that had continued to emerge from the networking introductions she had facilitated. "Elena, I wanted you to know how proud I am of the success you have achieved," Victoria said with genuine warmth that reflected her understanding of professional accomplishments that had exceeded her previous comprehension of my capabilities. "The recognition you are receiving represents achievements that clearly establish your standing among the most respected professionals in your field." The acknowledgement from Victoria carried particular significance because it represented validation from someone whose opinion had influenced my self-perception during periods when professional accomplishments remained invisible to family members who measured success through conventional status indicators. The conversation concluded with Victoria's request to include information about my professional achievements in the family holiday newsletter that she distributed to extended family members and close friends. The request represented complete transformation from diplomatic management of potential social complications to active promotion of professional success that brought recognition to the entire family. The week continued with confirmation of the expansion requirements that sophisticated client relationships demanded. The operational challenges were substantial, but they were accompanied by recognition and financial opportunities that validated years of specialized expertise development and strategic positioning within the cybersecurity consulting industry. The transformation from overlooked family member to nationally recognized cybersecurity expert had been completed within 3 weeks of the Pacific Medical Center incident response, demonstrating how quickly authentic expertise could achieve appropriate recognition when circumstances created opportunities for its value to become apparent to communities that possessed the knowledge to evaluate its significance. The conference room at Sterling Cybersecurity Solutions occupied the 28th floor of 555 California Street, providing commanding views of San Francisco's financial district that reflected the transformation my consulting practice had undergone during the month following the Pacific Medical Center incident response. The office space represented a calculated investment in professional infrastructure that would support the expanded client relationships and operational requirements that had emerged from sustained media recognition and business network referrals. The decision to establish formal office operations had been driven by practical necessities that exceeded the capabilities of independent consulting practice. Goldman Sachs required on-site security assessments that involved confidential financial data and regulatory compliance protocols. UCSF Medical Center needed comprehensive cybersecurity infrastructure evaluation that required specialized testing equipment and secure data analysis capabilities. Cisco Systems demanded technical expertise and project management resources that necessitated coordinated team responses rather than individual consulting services. Dr. Jennifer Walsh had joined Sterling Cybersecurity Solutions as Chief Technology Officer, following her departure from a prominent consulting firm that had been unable to provide the specialized focus and client attention that sophisticated healthcare cybersecurity required. Her decision to accept my employment offer represented validation that the professional recognition and business development success had created opportunities that attracted established industry experts who possessed complementary capabilities and shared commitment to excellence in cybersecurity consulting. Dr. Walsh brought extensive experience with federal cybersecurity regulations, healthcare industry compliance requirements, and enterprise-level security architecture that enabled Sterling Cybersecurity Solutions to address technical challenges that exceeded the scope of independent consulting practice. Her credentials included security clearances and industry certifications that were essential for engaging with Fortune 500 clients and government agencies that required verified expertise and operational security protocols. Michael Rodriguez had been recruited as Director of Client Relations, following his successful tenure managing cybersecurity consulting relationships for a major accounting firm that served healthcare and financial services clients throughout Northern California. His expertise in client relationship management and business development provided operational capabilities that allowed me to focus on technical consulting and strategic planning, while ensuring that client service delivery maintained the quality standards that had generated professional recognition and referral opportunities. The team expansion represented strategic positioning for sustained growth within the cybersecurity consulting industry, while maintaining the specialized focus and client attention that distinguished boutique consulting services from large corporate cybersecurity providers. The operational infrastructure supported complex client engagements while preserving the agility and technical excellence that had generated recognition among healthcare executives and federal law enforcement officials. The morning meeting focused on strategic planning for the remainder of the fiscal year, with particular attention to managing the volume of consultation requests that continued to exceed our expanded service delivery capabilities. The success metrics were encouraging, but they required careful evaluation of growth opportunities that aligned with long-term reputation management and sustainable business development objectives. Kaiser Permanente had confirmed a comprehensive cybersecurity partnership that would provide ongoing technical support and incident response services for their 12 million patient healthcare system. The engagement represented annual consulting revenue that exceeded my previous 3 years of independent practice, while establishing Sterling Cybersecurity Solutions as a preferred vendor for major healthcare institutions throughout the Western United States. The Kaiser partnership had generated additional healthcare industry recognition that positioned our firm among the most respected cybersecurity consultants, specializing in medical system protection. The California Hospital Association had featured our Pacific Medical Center success story in their quarterly publication, reaching thousands of healthcare executives who were responsible for cybersecurity preparedness at medical institutions throughout the state. Goldman Sachs had engaged Sterling Cybersecurity Solutions for a multi-year cybersecurity consulting relationship that would provide ongoing security assessments and incident response capabilities for their San Francisco operations and selected client portfolios. The engagement required security clearances and specialized protocols for protecting ultra-high net worth individual financial information that represented premium targets for sophisticated cybercriminal organizations. The Goldman Sachs relationship represented entry into the financial services cybersecurity market at the highest institutional level, with potential for expansion to additional investment banking operations and wealth management firms that required specialized expertise for protecting sensitive financial data and maintaining competitive advantages in highly regulated industries. UCSF Medical Center had requested comprehensive cybersecurity consulting services for their research operations that generated intellectual property worth hundreds of millions of dollars in pharmaceutical development and medical device innovations. The engagement would require specialized knowledge of research data protection and academic medical center operations that combined patient care with scientific research activities. The UCSF partnership represented strategic positioning within academic medicine that could generate consulting opportunities with medical schools and research institutions throughout the country. The visibility within academic healthcare would complement our established reputation in clinical healthcare operations, while expanding technical expertise into research data protection and intellectual property security. Cisco Systems had engaged Sterling Cybersecurity Solutions for specialized consulting services related to critical infrastructure protection and state-sponsored cyber threat analysis. The engagement required security clearances and technical expertise that positioned cybersecurity threats within broader national security contexts, representing expansion into government and defense industry consulting opportunities. The Cisco relationship provided access to technology industry networks and federal cybersecurity initiatives that could generate additional consulting opportunities with major corporations and government agencies that required sophisticated expertise for addressing advanced persistent threats and protecting critical infrastructure operations. Federal law enforcement agencies had continued to expand referral opportunities that exceeded the geographical scope of previous engagements. The FBI's Cybercrime Division had recommended Sterling Cybersecurity Solutions for healthcare organizations throughout the western United States, that were facing sophisticated attacks similar to the Pacific Medical Center incident. The federal referrals represented establishment as a preferred resource for healthcare cybersecurity incident response on a regional scale, with potential for national expansion as our reputation and operational capabilities continue to develop within federal law enforcement networks. Dr. Walsh provided technical analysis of the emerging threat landscape that healthcare organizations faced, emphasizing the increasing sophistication of criminal operations that targeted medical institutions with advanced attack methodologies that required specialized defense strategies and incident response capabilities. The threat environment has evolved significantly beyond opportunistic ransomware attacks to include state-sponsored activities and organized criminal enterprises that possess detailed knowledge of healthcare operations and regulatory compliance requirements, Dr. Walsh explained during her presentation to the strategic planning meeting. Healthcare organizations require cybersecurity consultants who understand both technical attack vectors and the complex operational environment that influences response strategies and regulatory obligations. The technical analysis supported strategic positioning of Sterling Cybersecurity Solutions as a specialized healthcare cybersecurity firm that could address sophisticated threats while meeting regulatory compliance requirements and supporting business continuity objectives that were essential for maintaining patient care operations during cyber. Michael Rodriguez presented client relationship analysis that demonstrated sustained growth in consultation requests and referral opportunities that had emerged from successful incident response and professional recognition within industry networks. The business development metrics indicated consistent expansion of client relationships and geographic market penetration that exceeded initial projections for consulting practice growth. Client satisfaction metrics consistently exceed industry standards for cybersecurity consulting services, with particular strength in technical expertise and response time capabilities that distinguish our services from larger corporate consulting firms, Rodriguez explained during his presentation of client relationship data. Referral opportunities continue to expand through professional networks and industry associations that recognize specialized expertise in healthcare cybersecurity and incident response coordination. The client relationship analysis supported expansion strategies that prioritize service quality and specialized expertise while building sustainable business relationships that could generate consistent revenue growth and continued professional recognition within cybersecurity consulting markets. The strategic planning session concluded with confirmation of expansion objectives for the remainder of the fiscal year, including additional technical staff recruitment, enhanced operational capabilities and geographic market expansion that would establish Sterling Cybersecurity Solutions as a recognized authority in healthcare cybersecurity consulting throughout the Western United States. The afternoon brought confirmation of additional professional recognition that had emerged from sustained success in high-profile cybersecurity incident response and consulting services. The Healthcare Information Management Systems Society had confirmed my selection as the keynote speaker for their annual cybersecurity conference, addressing an audience of over 3,000 healthcare IT professionals who were responsible for protecting patient data and medical systems from cyber threats. The keynote speaking opportunity represented the highest level of professional recognition within healthcare cybersecurity, establishing credibility that could generate consulting opportunities with medical institutions throughout North America, while positioning Sterling Cybersecurity Solutions among the most respected firms in the specialized industry sector. The American Hospital Association had invited me to participate in their National Cybersecurity Task Force that would develop best practices for healthcare organizations facing sophisticated cyber threats. The task force participation would provide platform opportunities for thought leadership within the medical sector while generating consulting opportunities with healthcare systems throughout the United States. The national healthcare industry recognition represented expansion beyond regional consulting practice to establish influence within industry policy development and professional education initiatives that could shape cybersecurity preparedness standards for medical institutions nationwide. Victoria contacted me Thursday afternoon to discuss family arrangements for Tyler's upcoming school performance, but the conversation quickly expanded to include professional recognition and business development success that had continued to generate discussion within her social network following the Blackstone Partners presentation. Elena, Richard mentioned that several of his business associates have been very impressed with the consulting services you provided and the professional expertise you demonstrated during their cybersecurity assessments. Victoria said with genuine enthusiasm that reflected her understanding of the business development success that had emerged from networking introductions she had facilitated. The feedback from Richard's business network provided ongoing validation that Sterling's cybersecurity solutions was delivering specialized capabilities that exceeded client expectations, while building reputation that generated additional referral opportunities within San Francisco's established business community. Victoria continued with information about additional networking opportunities that had emerged through her social connections, following sustained media coverage and professional recognition within cybersecurity industry networks. The San Francisco Museum of Modern Art Board had requested cybersecurity consulting services for protecting patron information and financial systems from sophisticated cyber threats targeting cultural institutions. The museum engagement represented expansion into nonprofit sector cybersecurity consulting that required understanding of donor privacy protection and cultural institution operations that managed sensitive personal information for wealthy patrons whose philanthropic activities might create privacy vulnerabilities. The conversation concluded with Victoria's invitation to attend Tyler's school performance the following week, emphasizing her desire to include family celebration of professional achievements that had brought recognition to our entire family through sustained media coverage and industry acknowledgement of specialized expertise. The family recognition represented personal validation that complemented professional success, demonstrating that authentic expertise eventually receives appropriate acknowledgement from both industry networks and personal relationships, when circumstances create opportunities for capabilities to become apparent to those who had previously failed to recognize their significance. The week concluded with confirmation that Sterling Cybersecurity Solutions had established sustainable operations that could address the volume and complexity of client relationships, while maintaining service quality standards that had generated professional recognition within healthcare, financial services, and technology industry networks. The transformation from independent consulting practice to recognized cybersecurity firm had been completed within 6 weeks of the Pacific Medical Center incident response, demonstrating how quickly specialized expertise could achieve institutional recognition and business development success when supported by strategic positioning and operational infrastructure that matched client requirements and industry standards. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.